I want you folks to do something. I want every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the white race to stand. Right now. Right now. Every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the white race. Now, remain standing. Now, remain standing. Now, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the black race please stand? Up, 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 and remain standing. Now, the brown race. Anybody who considers himself or herself a member of the brown race. Now, the yellow race. Now, the red race. Now, look around you, people. Practically everybody's standing. Now, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the human race please sit down? Now, people, that's the way it is. Every one of you, if you trace your DNA back far enough, you're going to find that some of your DNA came from Africa, because we all have the same ancestor back there, every single one of us. And those of you who think you don't have are obviously from outer space. Now, that means that every one of us is a 30th to 50th cousin to every other person in this room. So I want you to turn to the person on your left or your right or behind or in front of you, stick out your hand and say, "Hi, cousin."
Hi, cousin.
Now, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a biracial person stand? Don't you stand. Don't you stand. People, we have to get rid of the language of racism. Words are important, people. Words matter. You have to be careful how you use them, and you have to refuse to tolerate these ugly words being used in your presence. Now, make no mistake about this. I've been described as a teacher. I'm not a teacher. Teachers dispense facts and figures so that they can get their kids ready for the end of school testing. I've been called a trainer. You train dogs and horses and members of the military. I don't train people. I'm an educator. The word educator, I don't want to be interrupted anymore. People, the word educator comes from the root duck deuce, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. Now, in this country, we spend a lot of money on what we call education. It isn't education, it's indoctrination. It takes us 13 years to teach a student, to educate a student, to be ignorant about race, and to support ideas that make this a better country. This is a word for this in my vernacular, since I was raised on a farm, is bullshit. Don't write that down. People, I recognize it when I see it, and that's what we're living with right now. If we were in post-racial society, Donosaurus T. Rump would not be in the White House. He got elected because white people resented having a black man in the White House for 8 years. It's time to face the truth and say the truth, and it's time for women, and all people of color to stop playing defense and defending what they are and go on the offense. We were here first. We don't have to apologize for what we are or for what we do. Now, I know some of you are thinking, boy, is she a bitch? Yes, I am. Now, how many of you women have been called the B word? Look around, fellas. Everybody's heard it. Come up with a new word. Now, how many of you are called that by a male? All right, people, for me, the B word is an acronym for being in total control, honey. And when women are seen in control, the men around them call her the B word. You need to say, "You're right, darling, I am." And then you need to whip out your little Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife. Now, don't do that, because some of these boys are scared to death. Now some of you are thinking, she doesn't like men. Oh, God, do I like men. Oh, ooh, ooh, ooh. Find me one, please, please. Some of my best friends are men. I was married to one for 59 years. When I married him, he looked just like Marlon Brando. He really did. When he died, he looked like Telly Savalas. Lived with me for 59 years. Now, what's your next question? Sorry.
Okay.
Education should be fun.
I'm already cutting out questions. Okay. Let's talk about privilege.
Angela, you want to talk about privilege?
And this goes to you, Jane, first. How did you first become aware? This is a reflective question. How did you first become aware of your own privilege? And how did you first become aware that others had more privilege than you? And I'm going to ask the same of you also.
Oh,
so,
you want me to go first?
So you go first.
I never thought of it as white privilege. I just thought if you do the right thing, people will do the right thing where you're concerned. And because I'm white, they did. And they were wrong. Because I've been doing the wrong thing for about 33 years, I did the wrong thing. I thought I was all right. And then I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. And I watched a brilliant little blue-eyed white girl turn into a frightened, intimidated, unable to learn child in the space of 15 minutes because I accused her of not being smart enough because she had the wrong color eyes. And I watched 4 dyslexic brown-eyed boys read words they had never been able to read and spell words they had never been able to spell because nobody had ever told them that they could learn to read or spell. But on the day they had brown eyes, it was obvious that the world was theirs. They could do anything. I found out about expectations that day, and I realized that what we have done, what we white folks have done in this country ever since we got here, is treat people positively or negatively, not on the basis of the color of their skin, but on the basis of our ignorance about skin color, where it comes from and what it causes. This is not about skin color, this is about ignorance. And the answer to ignorance is education. It is not indoctrination, it is not schooling, it is not training, it is education. But you have to have teachers who know better if they're going to teach better. And teachers can only teach what they know. And unfortunately for all of us, we've all been led down the same ugly path of thinking that it's all right to claim privilege when what we should be claiming is ignorance. We've got the wrong word here, people. This problem is white ignorance. And white people are running the show. Now you're going to think she's a traitor to her race. I'm not a traitor to the human race, and that's the only race I see. Make no mistake about that. And as long as we keep on acting as though there are several races, we can have panels like this at which we discuss white privilege instead of discussing white ignorance and deciding to do something about it. We need to start really furnishing education in these schools instead of furnishing indoctrination. Did that answer your question?
Yes, partially.
All right.
The rest of the question is, so how did you become aware of your own privilege or of others having more privilege than you? You're talking about...
I watched my students.
It was watching the students.
And I realized, watching them, that they were exhibiting the behaviors that they were copying from me. They acted hey, my little brown-eyed students, the day they were on the top in that exercise, became me. And it made me sick to my stomach, and it does to this day. I hate to remember that day, because I watched my brown-eyed children we just loved one another in my classroom. We really did. And on that day, I found out that I don't want to be tolerated. Because in that classroom, my kids tolerated me because I'm blue-eyed. The first thing that was said after I told the kids that blue-eyed people aren't as smart as brown-eyed people, a little brown-eyed child in the front row, Debbie Hughes, looked up at me and said, "How come you're the teacher here if you got them blue eyes?" I got a real experience that day, and a real educational experience, people. I found out how I look to people of color. And I have spent the last 50 years trying not to look like that and trying to encourage others to stop it. Tell you another thing. Do I have a few more minutes here? My father, at the age of 60, watched the film that the CBC made in my classroom the second year I did the exercise. They sent me a copy of it, and I showed it to my father and my mother. My father was 60 years old, the most honest man, the most moral man I've ever known. I showed him that film. When it was over, he stood up, and in his bib overalls and his blue chambray shirt rolled up to the elbows, he reached in his back pocket, took out his red handkerchief, and with tears in his eyes, he blew his nose and said, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old." You can criticize what I do until the cows come home. And psychologists do until they get smart. I don't listen anymore because my father said, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old." If somebody had taught my father that when he was 9 years old, we would never have had to listen to some of the ridiculous racist remarks that he made. And he never made them again after he watched that film. Don't tell me that you can't change people. Don't tell me that you're too old to change. There isn't a person in this room who is too old to change. White folks, you got to change, because within 30 years, you will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. And you had better pray to whoever you pray for, that people of color are not going to get even with us and treat us the way we have treated them. If you can't think of any other reason for treating people like equal human beings, think of that one. Because what you do today is creating the future. I don't think you want the kind of future that you have provided for people in the present. I may be mistaken. You may not know what's going on. You know what's going on. And if I asked you, every white person in this room who wants to be treated the way we have treated people of color in this country, if you'd like to be treated that way, all you white folks, if you want that for the rest of your life, please stand. Did you understand the directions? If you're white and you think blacks have got it so good in this country and you want to be treated the way they have been for the rest of your life, just stand up. You know why you aren't standing. You know it's ugly, and you know it's happening, and you know you don't want it to happen to you. So I want to know why you're so willing to allow it for others in this post-racial society. Another question?
Okay, so we're talking about privilege and how you first became aware that others had more privilege than you, and how you might have been aware that you had more privilege than others.
Okay, first of all, I think it is important to emphasize the notion of privilege, but privilege, as Jane pointed out, can't explain the workings of racism altogether.
That's right.
Okay, so make that distinction. That's really important.
Well, do you want me to tell you when I first
Yes,
became
do that.
aware
Yes,
of
yes.
racism?
Yes, yes.
I had I don't know whether I would say good fortune or bad fortune, of growing up in the most segregated city in the United States of America during the 1940s and the 1950s, Birmingham, Alabama. And so I can't really tell you when I became aware of racism. I think that as I learned to think and learned to conceptualize, racism was always in the forefront. I can tell you that I remember when I was about 2 years old, I was washing my shoelaces, my white shoelaces, because I was going to wear them to Sunday school the next day. It was a Saturday evening. And then suddenly, I heard this this thunderous sound. As it turned out, the house across the street was being bombed by the Ku Klux Klan. Because I lived in an area of Birmingham that was right on the edge of the zone that had been created for black people. So we were able to live on one side of the street, white people on the other side of the street. When black people bought a house on the other side of the street, it was bombed by the Ku Klux Klan. But let me say something parenthetically here, because you might ask, well, how is it that black people were able to buy a house in the white neighborhood? Because of course white people would have to sell it to them. It was because white people bought the house. White people who were involved in the anti-racist movement bought the house so that black people could challenge the racial zoning laws. So this was in Birmingham, Alabama. You might have heard of Ann Braden from Louisville, Kentucky, who was one of my mentors. I met her when I was very, very young. And she and her husband, Carl, ended up doing the same thing in Louisville. They bought a house for a black couple. Carl ended up going to the federal penitentiary as a result because she was charged with some incredible charge. But the point that I want to make is that, when I learned how to think, I learned how to think about racism. And I was very fortunate to be raised by a mother who was a teacher. My father was a teacher as well. And I would like to say an educator in the way you described what it means to be an educator. Because as I've said many times, from the moment when I became aware of the fact that black people were treated as inferior, I can remember hearing my mother's voice say, "This is not the way things are supposed to be. This is not the way the world is supposed to be organized. And one day they will be different." So as a result, I learned how to imagine a different world early on. When I was, 3, 4, 5 years old. And I have, it wasn't so much a personal awareness. And I think that oftentimes we tend to only think about racism in personal terms. That there's, something wrong with this white person because this white person has racist ideas. But it's about ideology. It's about how larger forces are doing the work through our emotion and our consciousness. And the fact that during that period, so many white people, not all, but the vast majority of white people were convinced that black people were inferior. It had something to do with the way in which we conceptualize freedom. I mean, how did white people know that they were free? During slavery, this was supposed to be the first great democracy in the world. How did people who experienced that democracy know that they were free? Because they looked at slaves and they were able to say, "I am free because I am not a slave. I am free because I am not black. I am free because I am not in prison." So I think that it's really important to ask ourselves how these larger forces, how the state, how racist ideology works through individuals. And oftentimes people assume that is their ideas, is not their ideas. They have been infected before they even, oftentimes before they even acquire the ability to think, they think in a racist way. And that has to do with larger forces. I've always been interested in how these forces connect. So when we speak about racism, it's not just anti-black racism. It's racism that affects, all of the communities, Latinx communities, indigenous communities, Asian American communities, Muslim communities. But it's also about the relationship between racism and class exploitation. And it's about the relationship between racism and misogyny, and racism and transphobia. So the term that we often use now, intersectional, which means to try to think these things together and ask, how they reinforce each other and how they create modes of oppression that are especially violent and dangerous. Perhaps the people in this country who are the community that is most subject to violence, both state violence, institutional violence, and also individual violence, would probably be trans women of color.
Right. Right.
And so I think, oftentimes when we're in institutions such as universities, we're taught to isolate and analyze. And we forget that when we engage in these processes of isolating a concept for the purpose of understanding it, we forget that this is not the way the real world works. We assume that what's in our head constitutes social reality. But social reality is very messy. It's not the kinds of, as someone who has been a teacher at the university level for many, many years, 20 years or so training PhD candidates, I can tell you that the hardest thing to teach is the difference between the tools that we use to try to learn how to understand the world and the way the world exists in its craziness and messiness. The social world always exceeds our ability to fully comprehend it. And I think that if we don't recognize that, we will never move in the direction of revolutionary change, which is what we need in this country right now and in this world.
I'd like to ask the audience a question. May I?
Let me follow up with her, and then I'll come back to you. I'm doing this on behalf of the students who organized this event because the word privilege is something they specifically want you to address. You said you'd made a distinction between racism and privilege. How does privilege fit in to what you're talking about?
Well, I think white privilege is an important concept. And in a sense, it comes from W.E.B. Du Bois and his notion of the wages of whiteness. The wages, the metaphorical wages that you are paid simply because you are white. Or someone like Cheryl Harris, who writes about whiteness as property. Whiteness as a kind of valuable property. Or Peggy McIntosh, who of course writes about privilege as being a kind of invisible knapsack that white people carry that has all kinds of codes and ways of maneuvering in the world that give them a great deal more privilege than others. also something that one can discover in communities of color.
Yes.
I mean, I think about what's his name in the White House now. I try really hard to forget his name. But I was watching. I was watching one of his. I don't know why I was watching one of his speeches. I really don't. But what struck me was that there is always a black person sitting right behind him. Have you noticed that? There's always a black person, and that black person holds up a sign saying "Blacks for Donald Trump" or something ridiculous like that. The point that I want to make is that black people are also implicated in the way racism works.
Yes.
Particularly when one considers that now more than ever before, there are black people at in the corporate world. The thing I didn't speak about was capitalism. And the origins of racism within capitalism, and the way capitalism has always been racial capitalism. When we speak about capitalism, we should say racial capitalism. And therefore, white workers who are clearly exploited and oppressed by the capitalist system should recognize that until we purge our planet of racism, there will be no way to move beyond this exploitative way of providing the things that people need, all over the world. And I'll say, why is it that production happens, economic production happens, not because we as human beings, and we are all one, as Jane pointed out, have needs, and we need to eat, and we need clothing, and we need chairs, and all of these things. But it happens in order to provide profit for a relatively small number of people in the world. The wealthiest 8 men, because they're all men, on the planet own more than half of the entire world. And that is obscene. That is absolutely obscene. And that has a great deal to do with racism. It has a great deal to do with misogyny and all of the other modes of oppression. And it's certainly about privilege. That's the ultimate privilege, I would say. And I'll be quiet. I'm going to stop preaching.
Hear you. They came to hear you. You wanted to say something.
Today, I asked a young woman how long she thinks this has been going on, this racism against blacks. How long do you think it's been going on? Forever? You're wrong. 500 years. During the Spanish Inquisition, the people who were running the Spanish Inquisition and killing people because of their religion found out that they killed a whole lot of people who had the right religion. They couldn't tell what their religion is by looking at them. So they decided they had to find another way to identify the people that they were going to kill and enslave, and/or enslave. So they set upon skin color. People, it's only 500 years old. Now think of that. It's only 500 years old. Nobody was born a racist. There is no gene for bigotry. You were not born a racist. You have to be taught to be a racist, and you have to be carefully taught. And if you haven't seen that musical, in which the last song is, you have to be taught to be afraid of people whose skin is a different shade, of people whose eyes are differently made. You have to be carefully taught.
South Pacific.
Yes, South Pacific. You have to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You have to be carefully taught. And that's what we have to do in this country to keep this racism alive. If we want racism to stop, we have to stop teaching racism. In our homes, in our churches, people, Jesus did not look like the little Pillsbury Doughboy. And God is not an old white man with a long gray beard that looks like Charlton Heston playing Moses. And Mary did not have pale skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. Get over it. And do it now. You can make a difference if you choose to, you young people. How many of you have parents, mothers, who are really tired of sending Christmas cards? I'll tell you how to solve that problem. Go down to the store, buy a box of Christmas cards with the Holy Family picture on it. Take it home, color them right. When your mother sends those out this year, she'll never get another Christmas card from most of those people. People, we have to absolutely refuse to tolerate the intolerable. Elie Wiesel said, you must not tolerate the intolerable. And if it's intolerable for you, my cousins, then by the gods of war, it's intolerable for me, and I will not tolerate it. This has gone on long enough. This has gone on long enough. And we have gone along to get along long enough. We need to put a stop to it. And you can. Educators can. Educators can change this. If I can, you can. Get busy. But first,
this is a question that fits right with what you're saying. How can we talk about race and privilege with openness and inclusiveness in a way that prevents people from shutting down?
People can shut down or not, that's up to them.
Okay.
Let me tell you something. I am not responsible for how you respond to me. You got it? I flat out don't care. If you learn something in here this evening from this woman who has forgotten more than I'll ever know about racism, and what little I know, if you decide to learn something in here tonight, you'll learn something. If you decide to be mad, you'll be mad. Go ahead. I don't care. That's your problem, not mine. I am not responsible for how you feel. I am responsible for what I say. I'm responsible for what I do. You're responsible for your response to it. Be responsible for your responses. I'm not responsible for it.
Okay. I want to hear what Angela has to say to this.
Well, I totally agree with Jane.
Okay.
How can I not?
Accept that.
But as someone who has spent many years teaching university students, teaching graduate students, I've learned that it makes no sense for me to simply tell my students what it is I think they ought to know. They might learn enough to write a good paper, and then they'll move on, moving in another direction. So I've come to the conclusion that teaching really is about helping people to ask the right questions, to ask the right questions, and to be able to come to the conclusion themselves that there is something really terribly wrong with the way racism has shaped the history of this planet. I think education is about unleashing the imagination. What teachers, unfortunately, most often do is shut down the imagination and to prevent people from exploring the world in their own ways. And so I think that certainly there are many questions to be asked about race and racism, about the fact that race is a fictive concept. As Jane was pointing out, we're all members of the same human race. Race is a social construction. Race was produced by racism. But of course, this does not mean that it doesn't cause damage in the world, that it hasn't been the producer, the generator of the worst kind of violence one can imagine. But I think that, that what we try to do is to get people to come to that conclusion on their own. And not on their own as individuals. See, one of the reasons we have so many problems in this country and in this world, particularly during this neoliberal era, is because we have been encouraged to think of ourselves as individuals primarily and not members of a larger community.
Come back to my YouTube channels once more. This is Team Test Reaction. Kindly for watching this video for the first time, make sure you subscribe, like, share and comment. So guys, in today's video about Jane Elliott, hope all and everybody knew Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott is the white lady. She's from America, and she's now 91 years old. Thanks for Almighty God who has now given Eve a long life, because most of you don't know if we will reach 91 years, but she's 91 years and she has really championing for Africa, and she's only the voice of Africa. She's speaking in Africa. She's the only now hope to Africa. Most of them have now come out and defending Africa, and Jane Elliott, she has really defending black color for so long time, but this time round she has come out and she has said to Trump, kindly don't go on that direction, because when now you go to America, a lot of people are going through hardship. A lot of people are really suffering in America. We find that in America a lot of racism is really happening, and that is now that's why he has come out, because she's anti-racism. She is the only one that is talking about the racism in America. So this time she has come out and she has sending a warning to Donald Trump to stop talking about, to stop oppressing we as Africa. So because our people are being killed in United States, most of them are being racism, most of them are being raped, but Donald Trump is not talking, because his administration is sponsoring this allegation of racism. So when Donald Trump came in power, the first thing he did, he deported all immigrants come back to Africa. But this time round, she has come out and she has said that enough is enough. We cannot continue living in that hierarchy, because we know we as the Africa, we are the one who developed the country of Burkina of a United States, because our resources are being used in United States to develop their countries. They don't have any resources. Africa is the most richest continent in the world, but this riches has just vice versa. It's now the poorest continent in the world. So in Africa we have a lot of resources. It's being there. It's so sad to see us suffering, our black color suffering, our resources being taken outside to benefit the other countries, and these people then they come back to our continent, they lecture us, they give us the lecture, they oppress us, they racism is being happening. So this time round she has come out and she has telling that enough is enough. Let's not bull the people of Africa. Let's not bull the black people, because black people are the most respected people. So these people, they fear us to be united. So these white people, they fear Africa to be united. They see that when you united, unity is power. So we'll conquer them. So they normally used to destabilize us. When now you come to Africa, The only one is trending is Ibrahim Traore. The only hope now is talking about the unity of Africa. But you can find that a lot of leaders are being pupil to these West countries. They are now pupil to them, and they are going, and you can see that they wanted to eliminate Ibrahim Traore through Ivory Coast and Nigeria. And this is our brothers and sisters. And so these people are the one who are sponsoring these people to come and disunite us, so that we don't have peace, so that we cannot unite it. But Ibrahim Traore is calling out for unity, and that is what Jane Elliott is all about. She is talking about unity. She is talking about stop oppressing we as the black people. Don't give us the low wages. Give us the wages that people can live with. So these people are giving us the low wages. They are giving us the low salaries. They are giving us the less opportunity to America. When now to go to America, we are given the less opportunity, and people are really crying in those countries. So he has come out, and she has come out, and she has really defending we as Africa to unite it. We as Jamaica, we as Caribbean, we are just the friends. Let's unite it. Let's build our currency. Let's have our own currency, so that we develop our own continent. We cannot live with the country that is being used by other people, because we are given the fake democracy. So she is telling that, kindly, Donald Trump, don't stop oppressing we as the black people. Stop killing Ibrahim Traore, because they are planning to kill Ibrahim Traore. So she is really fighting for we as Africa and show for black cara. Don't racism. Just respect the Africa, because don't you know that they are now using General Lingley, and John Lingley is the black America. She's just a black cara. She was taken. So she has come out, and she has really defending the way as Africa. So kindly guys, for watching this video, make sure you subscribe, like, share, and comment about this video. And kindly guys, just make sure support me through your subscription. I thanks my loyal supporters who are coming back to watch my video. Bye for now, and I'll come back with more update.